Hello everybody, meteorologist Matt Gray with another edition of the Brainstorm, and oh my goodness, what a difference a month can make. And this has been one crazy one, and it is looking like it has absolutely saved our spring and saved our snowpack up in the mountains. Let me show you. First of all, you've definitely noticed how chilly it has been throughout the month. It has definitely not felt like spring. Now that we're in May, we're starting to see temperatures that feel much more like spring, but it was, well, you'll see. But you can see that, especially in central Washington, man, it was chilly. In fact, it's the coldest April on record for Ritzville, Fredo, Wenatchee, and Wilbur. 7th coldest on record in Spokane, 8th coldest on record in Lewiston. And that's not all. We also saw, of course, snow here a couple of weeks ago. And look at this. This is all these numbers here basically show whether the day was above or below average for the date in Spokane. And you notice here we had basically one day that was pretty warm. We had a couple of days that were a little warm, but not above 5 degrees warm, and a lot of days in the blue where we were well below our normal temperatures. And so you can see that it was basically mostly cold to below average. And that's what you need to have one of these top 10 record cold months. Particularly, you can see that second full week. That's when we had all of the snow. And speaking of snow, well, look at this. Lewiston, the 4th snowiest April on record, and the most that they've seen in Lewiston since 1979, the most snow, and that was just about a fraction of an inch. Meanwhile, in Spokane, a little over an inch, about 1.5 inches of snow. 14th snowiest on record. So we've seen a little bit more snow from time to time over the years in Spokane, but it just gives you a good idea of how nutty things have been over the month of April. And boy, you know, our snowpack really needed that. So I want to show you a couple of things because really I think it's going to make quite a big difference over the next couple of months with how things look and feel, whether you want to do river recreation, whether you want to go hiking up in the mountains, or maybe you just want things to stay pretty nice and kind of put off fire season as long as possible in the higher elevations where all the forests are. Well, great news in that regards. Not so much if you want to do some high elevation hiking. Look at Snoqualmie Pass. And this was, by the way, last week or the beginning of the week, where for 2022, 61.5 inches of snow at Snoqualmie Pass. Now, a lot of that was during the big snowy week a couple of weeks ago. But you can see that is, well, that's pretty close to some of the record levels since they started measuring the snow on Snoqualmie Pass. And well, certainly a couple of weeks ago it was quite a mess. Now let's look at the river basins and the snowpack conditions. And certainly if you've looked up in the mountains, in the high mountains especially over the past couple of weeks, you've definitely noticed that things do not look very barren at all. We've been keeping that snow because of the cold weather, and it's been staying cold up in the high elevations as well. And now look, for this point in the year, we've got 13% more than average in the Spokane River Basin. In Idaho, 10% more in the Clearwater Basin, 5% more in the Salmon River Basin. Especially the further south you got in Idaho, the worse the dry winter and the drought has been. So we have been on the higher end of things in the Idaho Panhandle, but man, it wasn't looking so great on April 1st, and it looks a whole lot better now. Same goes for Washington. The lower Yakima Basin was in a really tough spot on the 1st of April, and it's improved a lot and is still not great, and that shows you just how bad things were in the lower Yakima. But the lower Snake River has gone up quite a bit, and really, I mean, look what's happened in the upper Columbia, in the Spokane River on the Washington side, in the Pend Oreille Basin, and all across the state of Washington. We are looking at really nice snowpack numbers for this point in the year. I'm going to show you some of the charts because it really kind of gives you a good illustration of how this month has gone and how much of an impact this month has made and what we're going to see over the next couple of months. So we've been, throughout the winter, I've been showing you the Spokane River Basin because for most of us, that is going to be impacting our waters and what you're seeing. And notice here, so this was April 1st. Things were not looking so good And notice what happened as we went through the month. Slowly rising snowpack until we hit a peak at about the 23rd. Gone down a little bit with some warmer weather over the last week of April, and then another round of stormy weather has actually jumped that up just a little bit. But look at this. So we're sitting at about 22 inches. Now, what does that mean? That means that the snowpack on average is home to about 22 inches worth of water. Now, you add that up over all the mountains, that's a lot of water. And that'll feed our rivers and lakes and aquifers and everything else for a long, long time. Notice where we were on April 1st, our traditional kind of peak of the snowpack, where you see that green X. We were only at 21.1, and we were all the way up at 23.8 on April 23rd. So really, we've had basically peaked with our snowpack about a month late, and that has a lot to do with a very mediocre middle of the snow season, but also a really good end, and an end that we needed. We went from, you can kind of see, if we had stayed in this area here, we would have been melted off all of our snowpack basically in the middle of June around the Spokane River Basin. Instead, we are on track to be in early July, so right about the average. And this is quite dramatic in some of our other river basins as well. Take a look at this. This is the lower Snake River. Brutal in early April after some very, very warm weather during the month of March, and just not a lot of snow in this part of the inland Northwest, really since that big storm in the first week of January. So we were at a point where we were getting down towards the 10th percentile, so about 90% of years on April 10th had been above where the snowpack around the lower Snake River was. And by the way, this does include the Blue Mountains. Well, notice what happened after that. Instead of being on track for a melt-off in, say, early June, now we're talking about early July. So we're talking about a full month's difference. And let me tell you, that makes a difference for those higher elevations where they continue to stay chilly, where they continue to stay warm, and they continue to have that moisture hanging around. So, I mean, look at this. And we got more wet weather for the first week of May, by the way. Some of that will be snow in the highest elevations. So we're actually looking, we went from pretty bad shape to actually pretty decent shape for springtime as far as snow melt and things go to keep us nice and moist around for the end of spring and the beginning of summer around the lower Snake River, southeast Washington, and that goes for the river basins further upstream as well in north central Idaho. One place that has not continued to not fare well, has been kind of stuck in the rain shadow, has been the Okanagan Basin, and that includes basically from Omak all the way up into Canada, where it has been really, really tough this year. I mean, we're talking about, at certain points in April, we were talking about, kind of the 7th, 8th, 9th percentile for moisture in the snowpack. And look what's happened with all this wet weather. Just basically a straight line to now where we are on pace now to see our melt off, which is more typical in kind of by late May, where we don't have any more snowpack in the Okanagan Highlands, basically. And we leave the snow up on the highest peaks. And this is a little sub-basin, kind of the middle elevations around Okanagan County. And this, by the way, extends all the way up the Okanagan River into Canada as well. So really, really good news. And I think it is going to pay some dividends for us in having good water supply forecasts. We were already on track for that, according to water managers across Washington. I really think this is going to be very helpful for those around the Snake River, considering that we're going to have later melt-off, so that should pay dividends later on in the year, especially because it really looks like our wet weather pattern is going to be continuing through at least the first part of May, or at least to the first week and a half of May, first 10 days or so. So that is some really awesome stuff, especially in central Idaho, where things were not looking very good at all, and especially in southeastern Washington, where things were not looking very good at all. And these were both areas where I was going to be looking for some perhaps early activity or enhanced activity during the fire season. Still probably going to be looking at that, but less so. Probably going to be focusing more around the Okanagan Basin because of things have just not improved all that much throughout the year, as well as around central Washington, where we're still seeing drought. But that's a long ways away from now. Great news for us and everybody who lives with us and all the critters and everything else. Now, if you want to do high elevation hiking, Yeah, it's going to take a little while. We're going to see the snow stick around well through May, and it's probably going to be probably decently into July unless we get some sort of super hot weather in June, which of course we did see last year. But we will cross those bridges when we get there. In the meantime, things are looking really, really good on the snowpack front now, or at least better than they were a month ago. And we can thank some of this record chilly weather and record snowy weather for the higher elevations as a result. So that is this edition of the Brainstorm. We will be back next week with another edition talking about weather and the science of our planet here on the 4 News Now YouTube channel. So until then, I hope you have a great week. We'll talk to you again next time.